Imagine this. It's late at night. The room is dim, the only light coming from the cool blue glow of your phone. You told yourself you'd just check one thing, one quick scroll through your feed before bed. But that was 20 minutes ago. No, 30. And here you are, still swiping, chasing something you can't quite name. The clock ticks louder, the room feels smaller, and your mind is buzzing but not satisfied. You don't even remember half of what you've just consumed. Sound familiar? We live in a world where our minds are constantly under siege. Notifications don't just arrive, they invade. The endless scroll doesn't just entertain, it captures. And without even realizing it, we have traded something priceless for something fleeting. We have surrendered our attention. And here's the thing. This isn't about being weak or undisciplined. This is about living in a system engineered to keep us hooked. Every ping, every swipe, every carefully chosen video is part of a design not for your growth. Not for your peace, but for your engagement. And yet, there is another way. 2,000 years ago, long before any of this, a Roman philosopher named Seneca was asking the same question we should be asking right now. Who is in control of your life, yourself, or the world around you? His answer was clear. Reclaim your time, guard your mind, and choose deliberately how you live. In today's video, we're going to explore how Seneca's timeless wisdom can be the antidote to the chaos of our digital age. I'm not going to tell you to throw your phone in the river, delete every app, and live in a cave. What I'm going to share is far more powerful. How to turn technology from a master into a servant. How to live in the modern world without being owned by it. And how to build a life that feels full, focused, and truly yours. You'll learn the principles that can turn the noise down without disconnecting from the things that matter. We'll talk about how to anticipate the distractions before they even happen, how to remember what's truly important, and how to create a personal digital sanctuary that protects your peace. And we'll end with the ultimate choice. Whether you will let the siren song of the digital world steer your ship, or whether you will take the oars in your own hands. But before we dive in, because this channel is all about creating meaningful, thoughtful content for you, I have a small request. If you believe in what we're doing here, if you want more videos like this that go beyond surface-level tips and into deep, life-changing ideas, please take a moment right now to support the channel. Hit the like button, it tells YouTube this content matters. Subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Share this video with someone you know is struggling to find focus. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, consider using the Super Thanks feature to directly support the channel. Every bit of support helps me keep making these videos ad-free and deeply researched for you. Alright, now take a deep breath. Silence your notifications for the next few minutes. Let's step out of the noise together and into a conversation that could change the way you live in the digital world forever. In the hum of a modern morning. The day doesn't begin with the sun rising, it begins with the glow of a screen. Before the coffee is brewed, before feet even touch the floor, the hand reaches out almost instinctively to check the phone. Notifications spill across the glass like confetti after a parade. Messages, emails, breaking news alerts, weather updates, friend requests, reminders about sales you never signed up for. In that first minute of consciousness, the world has already claimed you. The mind, still groggy from sleep, is flooded with dopamine jolts from the first scroll, and without realizing it, you're already deep into the endless feed. News stories bleed into memes, which bleed into videos, which bleed into ads cleverly disguised as advice. It's an infinite loop, carefully engineered to keep you right there, finger hovering, thumb swiping, mind tethered. I once met a friend, let's call him Mark, who, without exaggeration, hadn't read a full book in over 5 years. This wasn't because he didn't enjoy reading. In his 20s, he devoured novels, philosophy, and biographies. But somewhere along the way, his attention fractured. It started innocently, a quick glance at his phone during lunch breaks, a little Instagram before bed. But over time, the quick glance turned into compulsive checking. He told me once, I don't even like half the stuff I'm looking at, but I can't stop. I feel like my brain is wired to need that next hit. His evenings, once spent with a novel and a glass of wine, were now swallowed by TikTok's hypnotic scroll. Even at work, he found himself switching between tabs every few minutes, never staying with one task long enough to feel the satisfaction of completion. He wasn't just distracted, he had lost his ability to focus, to be still. Mark's story is not rare. It's the silent epidemic of our age. We live in a perpetual state of being on a kind of mental standby mode where the mind is never fully at rest, always anticipating the next ping, the next piece of content. It's not just about wasting time, it's about the slow erosion of our inner life. Every moment we give away to the feed is a moment we're not fully present in our own existence. The architecture of our attention has been hijacked by companies whose entire business model depends on keeping us glued to the screen. This isn't conspiracy, it's design. Infinite scroll wasn't created by accident. Push notifications weren't invented to make life easier. They were built to train us, to condition us like lab rats pressing a lever for food pellets. Except the food is a dopamine surge and the lever is our phone. And here's the uncomfortable truth. For many of us, technology is no longer a tool we use, it's a force that uses us. That's the question we have to confront, not as a philosophical abstraction, but as a pressing reality. Are we still the ones steering this ship? Or have we quietly handed the wheel to algorithms that know more about our impulses than we do? When your phone buzzes in your pocket, is that your decision to check it? Or is it the result of millions of data points predicting exactly when you're most likely to take a look? If you've ever found yourself opening an app without remembering why, you already know the answer. 2,000 years ago, long before the first screen lit up, a Roman philosopher named Seneca faced a different kind of noise: political intrigue, public duties, endless obligations. He didn't have to dodge push notifications, but he knew the danger of living reactively, of letting the world dictate the tempo of your mind. Seneca spoke of Otium, a kind of leisure not defined by idleness, but by intentional, purposeful use of time. For him, leisure wasn't the absence of work, it was the presence of self. And as strange as it might sound, this man from ancient Rome might be one of our most relevant teachers in the age of Instagram and YouTube. He understood that life, if lived without guardrails, gets filled with noise. The only difference is that in his time, that noise came from the marketplace and the Senate floor. In ours, it comes from the glow of 1,000 screens. When you read Seneca today, his words carry a quiet urgency. He warns against frittering away life on what doesn't matter, against allowing others, whether through flattery, obligation, or distraction, to rob you of your most precious resource, time. Swap out others for apps, and you start to see how eerily relevant he is. The difference between then and now is the scale and precision of the distractions. The digital world doesn't just compete for your attention, it studies you, learns your weaknesses, and adapts to them. It knows if you're more likely to click on a video of a cooking recipe or a celebrity scandal, and it serves that to you at exactly the right moment to keep you from looking away. This is why Mark's struggle is so familiar. He's not weak-willed, lazy, or unintelligent. He's human. The systems he's up against are designed to exploit human nature, our craving for novelty, our fear of missing out, our desire to feel connected. Seneca would have recognized the pattern, even if the tools were foreign to him. He would have reminded us that the only real control we have is over our own mind, our own choices. We can't dismantle the internet, but we can decide how we meet it. And that's the pivot point, the reason this conversation matters. Because if we keep living in reaction, letting the scroll pull us forward like a current, we lose the capacity for deep thought, for presence, for the kind of stillness that makes life feel full rather than frayed. Seneca's voice reaches across 2 millennia to ask us a deceptively simple question. Will you live by design, or will you live by default? If you look around, you can see both answers playing out. You see people walking down the street, eyes locked on their phones, barely aware of the world around them. You see dinners where friends scroll in silence between bites. But you also see those rare moments: a parent playing on the floor with their child, a couple walking hand in hand without checking their devices, someone sitting in a park, book in hand, completely absorbed. The difference between these two scenes isn't about rejecting technology entirely. It's about remembering that our attention is ours to give, not theirs to take. Seneca didn't know about smartphones, but he knew about distraction. He knew about the danger of a mind always turned outward, always reacting, never returning to itself. And in a world where the pull of the feed is as strong as the call of the sirens, maybe his advice is more necessary now than ever. The human brain, for all its complexity, is still in many ways a survival machine designed for a very different world than the one we live in today. It was shaped in an environment where new stimuli were rare and often vital. Spotting a sudden movement in the grass could mean detecting prey or avoiding a predator. Our neural reward systems evolved to respond to these moments with bursts of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in motivation, learning, and the feeling of pleasure. In the wild, these surges were relatively infrequent, triggered by genuine accomplishments, finding food, completing a hunt, discovering something new. But in the digital world, those same reward circuits are relentlessly triggered, not by life or death discoveries, but by the simple act of swiping a thumb. Dopamine is often misunderstood as the pleasure chemical, but what it really provides is anticipation, the drive to seek out something rewarding. It's not the satisfaction itself, it's the pull towards satisfaction. This is why we keep scrolling. Every time we flick a finger upward on TikTok, Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts, we're gambling with our attention. Just like a slot machine, most swipes yield nothing of real value. But every so often, something hits: a funny video, a touching story, a piece of gossip that feels too good not to know. That unpredictability is what hooks us. It's the variable reward system, and it's one of the most powerful forms of behavioral conditioning known to psychology. Imagine Odysseus sailing past the island of the Sirens in Homer's Odyssey. Their song was said to be so irresistibly beautiful that sailors, upon hearing it, would lose all sense of purpose, steering their ships into the rocks to get closer. Odysseus knew this, so he ordered his crew to plug their ears with beeswax and tie him to the mast, forbidding them to release him no matter how much he begged. In our time, the siren song doesn't come from mythical creatures, it streams from our screens, tailored by algorithms that know the exact frequency of your personal desire. They know whether your siren song is a makeup tutorial, a sports highlight, a cooking hack, or a cat video. They sing directly to you 24/7, with no mask to lash yourself to and no beeswax thick enough to block the sound. The scroll is endless for a reason. The moment you reach the end of a page, your brain experiences a tiny pang of uncertainty. What if there's something better just beyond? That what if is the hook. In the early days of the internet, you had to click to see the next page of content. That small moment of friction was enough to make you pause. But the engineers who built modern platforms figured out that if they removed that pause, if they made the content flow, continuously people would stay longer. And not just a little longer. Engagement times skyrocketed. On TikTok, the average user spends nearly an hour a day, often in sessions much longer than they planned. A quick check can easily become a half-hour trance. YouTube Shorts, launched to compete, works the same way, feeding short bursts of stimulation that demand no commitment but still eat up huge chunks of time. The mechanics are simple but devastating. You scroll, you get a hit of dopamine, you scroll again. The brain learns the loop: effort, swipe, reward, dopamine, repeat. Over time, the baseline shifts. The brain begins to expect constant stimulation. Tasks that require sustained attention, reading a book, having a long conversation, even watching a full-length movie, start to feel slow, even boring. The result is a fragmented attention span, where the mind flits from one thing to another like a hummingbird, never settling long enough to go deep. The modern siren song doesn't kill us quickly. It slowly drains our ability to steer the ship at all. You can see this everywhere. People watch videos while eating, while walking, while waiting for the bus, while lying in bed. At the gym, earbuds pump music while a video plays on the phone propped against the treadmill screen. At restaurants, couples sit together but scroll separately. Their conversations reduce to "look at this" as they shove a screen across the table. It's not that these moments of entertainment are inherently evil. It's that they accumulate, replacing the quiet spaces where thought used to live. If the sirens of old lured sailors to their deaths, the sirens of the feed lure our minds into a kind of shallow living, where nothing gets our full presence. This is where the question of Seneca becomes fascinating. Seneca lived in a time without electricity, let alone the internet. Yet he was acutely aware of how easily human beings could waste their lives on trivialities. In his essay on the shortness of life, he writes that it's not that we have too little time, but that we squander so much of it. He warned against letting others dictate the use of your time, against scattering your attention so widely that you have nothing left for yourself. If he were alive today, it's hard to imagine he wouldn't see the endless scroll as one of the greatest thieves of modern life. But how would he respond? Seneca was not an ascetic in the extreme sense. He didn't advocate for rejecting all pleasure or withdrawing completely from society. Instead, he urged mindful engagement, choosing how to spend your time with intention. He might see the algorithm much like a clever politician or a flattering acquaintance charming on the surface, but with an agenda that serves them, not you. His strategy wouldn't be to smash the phone or swear off the internet entirely. It would be to reclaim the role of master over it, to recognize the siren song for what it is and decide, consciously, when and how to listen. He might advise us to build our own version of Odysseus's mast, clear rules and structures that keep us from drifting off course. This could mean setting fixed times for consuming content, using tools to block infinite feeds after a certain limit, or deliberately seeking out long-form, meaningful media instead of letting the algorithm choose for us. He would remind us that the mind is like a garden, and that if you let anything blow in on the wind, weeds will choke out the flowers. In a world of endless novelty, discipline is the fence that protects what's worth growing. The danger isn't just in the hours lost. It's in the kind of mind you cultivate. If your attention is always hopping from one stimulus to the next, your ability to think deeply, to hold complex ideas, to wrestle with difficult questions begins to erode. And when that capacity weakens, so does your ability to live deliberately. This is the true risk of the modern siren. Not that we run our ships into the rocks, but that we forget we were ever sailing toward anything in the first place. Seneca's voice would cut through the noise with the same clarity it did in Rome. Guard your time as you would guard treasure. Recognize that the pull of the scroll is not a harmless habit, it's an engineered seduction. And like the sailors of myth, if we don't take precautions, we will answer the call without realizing where it's leading us. The sirens of our age are many, their songs tailored to each of us. But the wisdom to resist, though ancient, is still ours to claim if we choose to hear it. To understand what Seneca meant by Otium and Negotium, it helps to step back from the noise of our day and ask a simple question. What, exactly, counts as a life well spent? The Roman world drew a line between the time you surrendered to public obligations neg odium, literally not leisure, and the time you reserved for yourself odium. But odium, in the Stoic sense, was not a couch and wine weekend. It was leisure with a backbone, time harnessed to examine the self, study, write, refine judgment, and align actions with values. Negotium was necessary. Empires don't run on daydreams. Yet Seneca saw how easily public busyness could inflate into a moral performance. A theater of urgency that grants status while quietly draining a person's capacity for reflection. He argued that without odium, a human being drifts into a life of reactions, always answering summons, never directing the play. With odium, the same person gains a steering wheel. If you translate this into American life today, the contrast is instantly familiar. The cult of busyness runs from high school AP schedules to corporate Slack channels that never sleep. We measure our worth by calendar density, inbox velocity, and the number of meetings we were looped into. A manager logs 12 Zoom calls, leaves with 3 new dashboards and a dozen action items, and somehow ends the day with the uneasy feeling that nothing important happened. A parent toggles between teams, text threads with teachers, and a U Sport sign-up portal that feels like filing taxes. A college student studies with 6 tabs open, a group chat pinging every 14 seconds, and a YouTube window on Study With Me ambience that becomes a rabbit hole of productivity gear reviews. It feels like work. It looks like work. The body is tired. But outcomes, the sort of outcomes that matter, are surprisingly thin. This is the trap Seneca diagnosed. We are not given a short life, he writes, but we make it short. He didn't mean we should abandon responsibility. He meant that busyness becomes a counterfeit of meaningful engagement when it is unfocused, externally driven, and disconnected from an examined purpose. To avoid caricature, it's worth noticing that Seneca himself was no hermit preaching from a cave. He was a senator, a teacher of the future Emperor Nero, a participant in the political machine with all its compromises. He knew from the inside what negotium requires. Favors, audiences, petitioners, the constant sense that someone wants a slice of you. He also knew the corrosion it produces when you never step away. Earlier in his life, under the Emperor Claudius, he was exiled to Corsica and enforced Otium. The story is messy, like most political stories, but the result is clear. In that distance from court life, he wrote. He studied. He thought. He worked out ideas that would anchor him later. When he returned to Rome and later tried to retire during Nero's reign, he argued that a man serving the Commonwealth through writing and moral philosophy was not withdrawing selfishly. He was changing arenas. In the treatise often called On Leisure, he defended a form of odium that still serves others. If you cultivate wisdom in quiet and then write letters that teach, you could do more lasting good than racing from banquet to hearing to ceremony. A person who never rests from the urgent helps little and understands less. Put more bluntly, negotium is the churn. Otium is the compass. The churn has its place. Children need breakfast, projects need shipping, streets need paving. But without a compass, our days degrade into motion without direction. A clean email inbox or a fully attended calendar can feel like control, but it's a mirage. The point of control is not to respond faster. It is to choose better. Modern work culture muddles this by rewarding responsiveness. We praise the colleague who replies in 5 minutes at 10 p.m., not the one who quietly and repeatedly solves the right problem at 10 a.m. This is why busy and effective have drifted apart. Busy is friction with the environment. Effective is movement toward name. Seneca's language gives us a vocabulary to address this drift. Otium is not laziness, but intentional refuge. It is a room in the house of your life where you decide what matters and you shut the door to think. In that room, you ask questions that only you can answer. What result would make this week worthwhile? What virtues do I want to practice in the next difficult meeting? Which commitments no longer match who I am? When you construct such a room in time, even 1 hour at dawn, you swap the adrenaline of constant reaction for the steadier heat of considered action. The paradox is that disciplined leisure produces a different kind of energy. After true odium, negotium feels less like drowning and more like swimming. Consider examples that most Americans will recognize. A software team spends Monday morning in a stand-up that drifts for an hour. Each person recites tasks like airport announcements. Everyone leaves with the same anxiety they brought. Compare that to a team whose manager blocks 2 hours on Monday with notifications off, sets 3 outcomes for the week, and eliminates 2 meetings to protect deep work on a critical feature. The second team is practicing odium at the group level. Or think about a public school teacher who is given a planning period but loses it to covering other classes and answering parent emails. When she carves out 30 protected minutes after school, no email, door closed to quietly review the next unit, align assessments with goals, and prepare a single strong lesson hook. Her evenings become less chaotic, her mornings calmer, and her students learning sharper. That is Otium as craft stewardship, not escapism. The distinction also clarifies why "I'm slammed" has become a humble brag. The phrase signals importance in a culture that equates demand with value. Seneca would call foul. If you're always in demand, you're expendable to too many agendas. That is not importance, it is availability. True importance shows up in the ability to say no, to concentrate, and to produce work with a signature. Saying yes to everything is not generosity. It is the fear of missing permission to matter. Otium breaks that fear by giving you a place to choose, and by reminding you that your life is not a public utility. Seneca's personal choices sharpen the lesson. After years in Nero's orbit, he tried to hand back his wealth and retire from public life. He knew the court's currents had grown poisonous, and that staying would rot whatever character he had left. He was ultimately forced to die. Rome was not kind to would-be retirees, but the attempt matters. He had learned that tranquility cannot be borrowed from externals. It must be grown in the habits of a mind that knows its limits. And on tranquility of mind, he counsels a friend to vary his activities, to avoid both frantic busyness and sloth, and to keep his thoughts disciplined and loyal to a few good aims. It is the Stoic way. If you can't control the storm, control the hand on the rudder. Translate those principles into the digital arena, and the applications become concrete. Otium in a world of infinite feeds means creating boundaries that make reflection possible and useful. It might begin with a rule that your first 90 minutes each morning belong to a single intention: learning a language, drafting a chapter, rehearsing a presentation before you open any app that monetizes your attention. This is not about moral purity. It's about neurochemistry. If you let alerts write your morning script, the day gets framed around other people's priorities. When you write the script, the day's interruptions have to negotiate with a shape that already exists. Another practice is to separate thinking time from communication time. The average knowledge worker treats the day as one long, threaded conversation. Email, DM, comment, ping, repeat. But because you owe them your best, and your best requires concentration. In practical terms, that might mean setting 2 windows, say 11:30 to 12 o'clock and 4:30 to 5 o'clock for inbox processing, with your phone on Do Not Disturb and your team aware of the pattern. In between, you protect a mid-morning and mid-afternoon block for generative tasks that move the needle. If someone truly needs you, they'll call. Emergencies are rare. Most urgent traffic is anxiety trying to involve you. Curation is another extension of Otium. The Roman household had a threshold. Not everything could come in. Your home screen deserves the same. Move social apps off page 1. Keep a single page with the few tools that serve your best work: camera, notes, calendar, a well-chosen reading app, and put everything else in a folder you must search to access. This adds deliberate friction. 2 extra seconds for your reflective mind to catch up and ask, is this what I want to do right now? Pair that with mute first notifications. Opt out by default. Then add back only the signals that truly help. A spouse, your child's school, a key teammate on a deadline. The rest can wait. Otium thrives in the space between pings. There's also the practice of intentional leisure that actually restores you. American culture often divides time into work and vegging out, as if recovery must be passive. Seneca suggests something richer. Rest that nourishes is not numbness. It is engagement without pressure. Swap an hour of vacant scrolling for a slow walk without headphones, a chapter of a difficult book read out loud to yourself, a piano piece practiced badly, a sketch made in pencil. These are not productivity hacks. They are ways to reintroduce texture to your mind's diet so that algorithmic snacks lose some of their grip. When your leisure has a pulse, you stop seeking it in anesthesia. For parents, Otium can be a gift to children as well as to themselves. A family quiet hour on Sunday, books, drawing, naps. No devices teaches kids that silence has a shape and can be shared. A nightly ritual where phones go into a basket at dinner models boundaries, as normal rather than punitive. The point is not to enforce a museum. It is to make a home where attention is a resource everyone learns to respect. Professionally, teams can encode Otium in a process. No meeting mornings twice a week are a simple example. So are written memos that replace slide decks, forcing deeper thinking. A product group might adopt office hours for chat, green from 1 to 3 p.m. Otherwise, async marketing could schedule creative sprints with phones in another room and a physical timer on the table. These are masks against the sirens. They keep the ship on course when willpower dips. The test of these practices is not whether they feel strict, but whether they make better work and calmer people. When a sales team closes more deals after cutting 3 recurring meetings, the evidence speaks. None of this requires a monastery. It requires replacing the prestige of being busy with the integrity of being directed. A physician can't avoid acute pages. A firefighter can't silence the alarm. But even in demanding roles, micro-Otium is possible. 5 unbroken minutes to breathe before rounds. 30 seconds to write the one intention for the next call. A disciplined note after the shift. There's a deeper ethical layer here. Seneca's case for Otium was not merely personal, but civic. He believed a mind refined and quiet is a public asset. A judge who reads history in the dawn hours decides cases differently. An engineer who spends Saturdays studying first principles will design safer bridges. A city planner who takes a phone-free walk through neighborhoods hears the music of a place and plans better bus routes. The benefit of Otium compounds outward. A more thoughtful citizen makes a saner comments. In the digital economy, where opinions are cheap and outrage is subsidized, the most subversive public act might be the private choice to think carefully before speaking. All of this assumes courage, because Otium forces trade-offs. When you protect time for thinking, someone will be annoyed. When you remove yourself from a thread, someone will call you aloof. When you say, I can answer that at 4:30 to a 9 a.m. ping, someone will question your commitment. Seneca, the same man who learned the cost of court life, would say that tranquility has a price and that you should pay it gladly. The alternative cost is higher, a life spent being available, without ever becoming yourself. To avoid abstraction, imagine a week restructured along these lines. You start Sunday by choosing 3 outcomes that, if achieved, would make the week meaningful. Finish the draft proposal, teach your daughter to ride a bike, and have a hard conversation with your teammate about roles. You block morning Otium from 7 o'clock to 8:30 Monday through Thursday, phone in another room, 1 goal per session. You set your email windows, tell your team, and stick to them. You remove social apps from your front page and log out after 8 p.m. You end each workday with 5 minutes to review what moved and what didn't, and to write tomorrow's top task on a sticky note left on your keyboard. On Friday afternoon, you reflect. Were you less busy and more effective? If yes, you doubled your week. If no, you adjust the design, not by adding apps, but by sharpening boundaries. Over a month, you notice that the proposal is not just done, it's better. Your daughter is writing by herself. The conversation clarified expectations and friction dropped. The inbox is still full, but you're less owned by it. That felt sense that your day's answer to your aims, more than to random inputs, is what Seneca was trying to hand down. One objection inevitably arises. Isn't all this just productivity advice wrapped in Roman robes? The answer is no, because the goal is different. Productivity is about output volume. Otium is about interior alignment and the wise use of a finite life. Sometimes it will boost output. Sometimes it will reduce it and increase quality. Sometimes it will redirect effort entirely. Otium gives you permission to stop doing work that looks important but isn't, to decline opportunities that sparkle but dilute, to recenter on projects and relationships that you would be proud to have define your limited years. It lifts the conversation from hacks to telos, from tactics to purpose. Technology can help or hinder, and the stoic move is to make it help. Blockers, focus modes, grayscale screens, and minimalist phones are not badges of virtue. They're modern beeswax in your ears. The rule of thumb is simple. If a tool increases the ratio of intention to impulse in your day, keep it. If it reverses that ratio, discard or fence it. A Kindle that holds a single book and no alerts can be an instrument of Otium. A browser with 20 pin tabs might be a factory of Negotium. A paper notebook can be a sanctuary because it cannot beep. The elegance of paper is not nostalgia. It is the absence of requests. In the end, Otium and Negotium are not enemies. They are partners that need clear contracts. Negotium says, "You owe the world your efforts." Otium replies, "And I owe myself the clarity to make those efforts count." Without that reply, you end up performing availability as if it were service. With it, you render a rarer contribution, work that bears the mark of a centered person. Seneca's life, brilliant, compromised, often endangered, reminds us that circumstances will not hand you that center. You must build it, guard it, and return to it when you falter. Picture a simple image, a door with a latch on your side. Behind it is a desk with a few good books, a blank page, a window that shows the same tree every day so you can see the weather change. You go in there at a set time. You don't take the world with you. You do one thing that makes sense for who you are and what you're trying to do. Then you come out and face the noise with a straighter back. That is Otium. In a culture that worships the calendar, it's a quiet revolution. And if Seneca is right, the only way to trade a life of relentless activity for a life of real consequence. Premeditatio malorum sounds like something pulled from an ancient spell book, but in the Stoic tradition, it was one of the most practical tools for living. The phrase means the premeditation of evils. And it's not about wallowing in fear or becoming cynical. It's about rehearsing in the mind the challenges, temptations, and setbacks you are likely to face so that when they arrive, you meet them with readiness instead of surprise. For Seneca, this was part of building an inner fortress. Premeditatio malorum might look like imagining the moment you get a late-night work email that could ruin your weekend. You can picture the ping, feel the reflexive urge to open it, and already have your counter move ready. Close the laptop, write yourself a note to tackle it Monday, and go back to your evening. By rehearsing, you turn an impulsive decision into a deliberate one. This approach can be applied to the biggest distraction machines of our age. Digital platforms designed to keep us engaged far beyond our intention. If you know that after dinner you tend to sink into a bottomless TikTok scroll, Premeditatio malorum would have you picture that scenario in advance. You on the couch, the phone glowing in your hand. Then just one more, whisper looping in your head. Then you set the conditions beforehand. Maybe you plug your phone into a charger in another room or delete the app on weekdays so that the temptation is cut off at the root. It's the same principle as Odysseus having himself tied to the mast before hearing the sirens. He didn't rely on willpower in the heat of the moment. He engineered the environment so the moment never spiraled. Paired with premeditatio malorum is memento mori. Remember you will die. The phrase sounds harsh in a culture that tends to hide death away, but the Stoics saw it as liberating. It is not a call to morbidity. It is a call to urgency. To remember that life is finite is to remember that every hour has weight. Seneca wrote to a friend that the thought of death should make us guard our time as we guard a treasure. In a digital context, memento mori becomes a way of snapping out of autopilot. If you knew you had a year to live, how much of it would you want to spend watching algorithm-fed videos you won't remember tomorrow? If this afternoon were your last, would you choose to spend it in a group chat argument about something you didn't care about last week? The point isn't to strip away joy or casual fun, it's to strip away the filler that masquerades as living. The combination of these two Stoic tools, anticipating your weak points and remembering your mortality, creates a kind of mental armor. You become less reactive because you've already played out the scene. You become more selective because you've reminded yourself the clock is running. But a fortress is not built only with walls. It needs an inner chamber where you can retreat and take stock. For the Stoics, that chamber was intentional solitude. This is not loneliness or isolation. It's a deliberate step back from the noise to face yourself without distraction. Intentional solitude today is harder to achieve than in Seneca's time because the noise follows us everywhere. Even in an empty room, the phone can fill the space with 100 voices. Practicing solitude means creating space that is not penetrated by constant input. It could be as simple as leaving the phone at home for a walk, or sitting in a cafe with only a notebook, or closing your office door for 30 minutes with no devices and no music. The value of this isn't just rest. It's that in solitude you can listen for thoughts that don't get airtime when you're always reacting. You start to notice patterns, the projects you keep avoiding, the relationships that lift you up or drain you, the things you talk about wanting to do but never start. Without solitude, these signals get buried under the next notification. Self-reflection is the natural companion to solitude. The Stoics wrote letters, kept journals, and reviewed their days each evening, not to beat themselves up, but to calibrate. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic emperor, filled notebooks with reminders to himself. Be patient here, be firm there, don't get sucked into trivialities. Today's version could be as informal as jotting down. Today I check my phone 12 times in the first hour after waking. Tomorrow I'll try to cut that in half. Or, I handle that tense meeting calmly. That's progress. The goal is to see your own mind at work, to catch yourself in the act, and to adjust course while the ship is still close to shore. A modern example brings these ideas into sharp focus. A woman I'll call Lisa decided to try a 7-day digital fast. She wasn't cutting off all technology. She still used her laptop for work and checked email twice a day, but she deleted all social media apps from her phone, turned off non-essential notifications, and replaced her evening TV habit with reading. The first day was brutal. She kept reaching for her phone out of habit, only to find there was nothing to check. Waiting in line at the grocery store felt like standing still on a moving walkway, everyone else scrolling, her just waiting. But by day 3, the twitch to check had eased. She noticed conversations with her partner were longer. She remembered details from a book chapter she'd read the night before. By day 5, she started going for walks after dinner, just to be outside without a destination. On the 7th day, she sat down to reflect. She realized she'd felt less anxious, not more, without the constant drip of headlines and posts. She'd slept better. Most surprisingly, she didn't miss much. The updates she thought were urgent were mostly noise, and the few important things found their way to her anyway through a call or text. Lisa's digital fast was, in essence, a week of practicing all 3 Stoic tools at once. She had anticipated her moments of weakness and removed the triggers, premeditatio malorum. She'd remembered her time was limited and wanted to spend it on things she would remember, memento mori. She created solitude each evening to read and think, which gave her the space to reflect on what actually mattered to her. Seneca would have recognized the experiment immediately. He might have told Lisa that what she'd built was the beginning of an inner fortress, and that the real challenge was to keep building it once the fast ended. Because the digital world is not going away, and neither are the temptations it offers. The point isn't to hide from it forever, but to walk into it on your own terms, with your defenses in place. That is the essence of Stoic resilience, knowing where the attack will come from, valuing your time enough to defend it, and maintaining a place inside yourself that no amount of noise can penetrate. If you want, I can now expand this into the full 3,000+ words version by adding more American life relatable examples, detailed breakdowns of premeditatio malorum and memento mori in digital contexts, plus step-by-step solitude practices that match Seneca's methods. That would make the section richer, more immersive, and ready for your long-form script. Would you like me to proceed with that expansion? Building what could be called a digital sanctuary is less about creating a perfect tech-free bubble and more about taking back control of how, when, and why technology has access to your attention. In practice, this begins with setting boundaries that most people talk about but rarely enforce. The simplest is the do not disturb function that every smartphone has but almost no one uses with intention. Most people flip it on only during a meeting or at the movies, but it's actually a shield you can raise anytime you want to reclaim a piece of the day. Imagine coming home from work, putting your phone on Do Not Disturb from 6 to 8 p.m., and letting that time be for cooking dinner, talking to your family, or simply being with your own thoughts. The messages will still be there later, but the difference is that you will approach them on your terms, not the moment someone else hits send. The same applies in the morning. If the first hour after waking is notification-free, your mind gets a chance to warm up with something of your own, choosing a workout, a walk, a chapter of a book before the demands of the world flood in. Boundaries also mean controlling the quantity and timing of your app use. The modern smartphone allows you to set app limits, but most people dismiss them when the reminder pops up. A more disciplined approach is to choose your limits in advance and treat them like you would a financial budget. If you had $20 a day for discretionary spending, you use it knowing there's a hard stop. You might even save that time for when you could be fully present with it instead of squeezing it into elevator rides and grocery lines. Setting hard limits creates scarcity, and scarcity makes you more deliberate. Just as important as time limits is establishing offline hours windows of the day when the phone, laptop, and tablet are not in play. For some people, this is during meals. For others, it's the last hour before bed. You might choose Sunday mornings or entire evenings once or twice a week. Offline time isn't about rejecting technology wholesale. It's about letting your nervous system reset. In those quiet stretches, you might notice a subtle shift. Conversations get deeper. You look around more. You start to register the details of your environment instead of scrolling past them. These pauses create the mental breathing room that constant connectivity erodes. Beyond time-based boundaries, building a sanctuary means mastering the art of curation. Every feed you scroll is a garden, and if you never weed it, it fills with whatever blows in from the algorithm. This is why many people's social media feels noisy, irritating, or anxiety-inducing. They've let the default settings dictate the content. You can change that. Start by unfollowing accounts that consistently trigger negative emotions or waste your time. If you can't unfollow for social reasons, use the mute function so their posts don't appear. Then actively follow accounts that inspire, teach, or genuinely make you laugh. Think of it as creating a neighborhood where you actually like your neighbors. The same applies to YouTube subscriptions, podcasts, newsletters, any input channel. The cleaner the feed, the less mental junk you consume without realizing it. Notifications are another piece of the architecture. Most people let their devices send alerts for everything. Likes, comments, suggested videos, breaking news, weather, people you may know. Each one is a knock at your mental door. The trouble is that these knocks don't just interrupt you, they fracture your focus. And it can take minutes to fully re-enter whatever you were doing before. In a well-built digital sanctuary, you strip notifications down to the essentials. Calls from close family, perhaps texts from a few key people, maybe a calendar reminder for something truly important. Everything else, it can wait until you decide to check. That decision alone changes the power dynamic between you and your devices. You're no longer reacting, you're choosing. Even with boundaries and curation in place, the mind needs regular detox from digital input. This doesn't have to mean disappearing into the woods for a week, though that's great if you can do it. It can be as simple as a daily ritual of going screen-free for a set period. 30 minutes at lunch without checking your phone. A walk after dinner where you leave the device at home. A bedtime routine that starts with plugging your phone in across the room and reading something printed. The point is to create moments when your attention is fully yours, so you can see how it feels to live without the drip feed of updates. Over time, these small detoxes recalibrate your baseline, so you're less dependent on constant stimulation. One of the most effective ways to commit to a digital sanctuary is to treat it like a personal experiment. Keep a 30-day journal tracking your environment, habits, and how you feel. On day 1, document your starting point. How often do you pick up your phone? What apps eat the most time? How do you feel after an hour of scrolling versus an hour of doing something offline? Then, as you make changes, setting do not disturb windows, limiting apps, cleaning up your feeds, note the effects. You might discover that you're more irritable on days when you check the news first thing, or that you sleep better when your phone is in another room. By day 10, you may notice that certain urgent notifications aren't actually urgent. By day 20, you might find yourself reaching for your phone less out of habit and more with a specific purpose. At the end of the month, you'll have a clear before and after picture. For many people, the changes are both subtle and profound. Deeper conversations, more sustained focus at work, a sense of calm that wasn't there before. The journal becomes proof that the sanctuary isn't just a nice idea, it has tangible benefits. And once you've experienced those benefits, it's much harder to go back to living without walls. A digital sanctuary isn't about perfection. You'll still have days when you slip, when you spend more time online than you planned, when you react to a notification you should have ignored. The point isn't to eliminate every distraction, it's to design an environment where focus, presence, and intentionality have a fighting chance. In a world that profits from your constant engagement, choosing when and how you connect is an act of quiet rebellion. It's you saying, I decide who gets my attention and when. Over time, that decision shapes not just your relationship with technology, but your experience of life itself. Technology in itself is neither savior nor villain. It's a tool, and like any tool, its value depends on the hands that hold it. A hammer can build a home or break a window. A smartphone can connect you to meaningful conversations or trap you in an endless loop of distractions. The danger comes when the tools shift from being something you control to something that controls you. This is where Seneca's thinking is so relevant. He lived in a world where wealth, influence, and public life could seduce a person into living for show instead of substance. Today, our public stage is digital, and the applause comes in the form of likes, shares, and views. If we're not careful, the technology that could help us grow becomes a cage we willingly lock ourselves into. The key distinction is between using technology with purpose and being consumed by it. The difference is not subtle, it's the gap between steering the ship and drifting wherever the current of algorithms takes you. Artists in particular have learned to walk this line. Take a photographer who uses Instagram to share her work and find clients. She sets aside 2 15-minute windows each day to post new photos, reply to comments, and engage with other artists' work. She avoids browsing the Explore tab because she knows it's engineered to keep her there longer than she intends. The rest of her time goes into shooting, editing, and refining her craft. She's not ignoring the platform. She's putting it in its place. Or consider a musician who uses TikTok to showcase short clips of new songs. He records content in batches once a week, schedules posts, and spends his creative energy in the studio instead of in the dopamine trap of constant scrolling. These artists understand that their presence on these platforms serves their growth, it's not the growth itself. Entrepreneurs face the same challenge. A small business owner might use social media ads to drive traffic to her website, but refuses to spend her mornings checking analytics obsessively. Instead, she sets a weekly review session to assess results, adjust campaigns, and plan next steps. She knows that the minute-by-minute data spikes are more about emotional highs and lows than actionable strategy. Another business owner might leverage project management software to keep his team aligned, but avoids adding unnecessary apps just because they're trendy. He treats technology like a carpenter treats a toolbox. Each tool has a purpose, and if it doesn't serve the job, it doesn't belong in the box. Seneca would have recognized the temptation to mistake the means for the end. In his time, it might have been the Roman elite chasing public honors or chasing wealth for its own sake, forgetting that these were supposed to serve a virtuous life, not replace it. Today, it's easy to confuse digital visibility with real progress. You can spend hours crafting the perfect post. Seneca would argue that the measure of a tool's worth is whether it helps you live according to your values. If it doesn't, then no amount of clever use justifies its cost and attention. Maintaining presence in the digital age requires conscious strategy, not just good intentions. One of the simplest is single tasking, doing one thing at a time, fully, before moving to the next. It forces you to commit your attention to the moment at hand. Another strategy is to define clear entry and exit points for digital tasks. Instead of vaguely deciding to check email, you can set a goal. I'll process my inbox until it's at 20 unread messages, or for 20 minutes, whichever comes first. Once the condition is met, you step out. People used to step outside for air or grab coffee with a colleague. In the remote work era, breaks often mean switching from one screen to another. That's not a break, it's a change of channel. Real breaks involve stepping away from the feed, taking a walk, stretching, looking out a window, without pulling out your phone. These moments of disengagement aren't wasted time. They're what keep your mental muscles from burning out. It also helps to anchor your day with offline rituals. Begin and end without a screen if possible. Mornings could start with a short journal entry, a few minutes of exercise, or making breakfast without checking messages. Evenings might include reading a physical book or having a face-to-face conversation. These rituals are not anti-technology. They're reminders that your life is bigger than the rectangle in your hand. They train your mind to be comfortable without constant digital stimulation, which makes it easier to stay present when you are using technology. A manager decides what gets in front of them in the first place. This mindset leads you to audit your digital environment regularly. Which apps are genuinely serving you? Which ones are time sinks? Which notifications are helping you stay informed? And which are simply tugging at your attention like a bored child? Technology can and should be a growth multiplier. It can help you learn faster, connect with people you'd never meet otherwise, and bring your work to audiences across the globe. But the multiplier works both ways. If you feed it aimlessness, it will multiply your aimlessness. If you feed it focus, it will multiply your results. The responsibility lies in deciding which one you want more of. The truth is, no app, platform, or device is designed to care about your deepest goals. They're designed to keep you engaged. It's your job to align their use with your priorities, to make sure that the hours you give them come back to you in value, not regret. Seneca might say that the goal is to stand in the middle of this flood with your feet firmly planted, letting the water flow around you without sweeping you away. Technology is part of the current. It can carry you faster toward the places you choose, or it can spin you endlessly in circles. The art of living present in the digital world is learning to steer, to use the current without losing yourself to it. And that comes down to remembering every day that the tool is in your hand, not the other way around. Seneca's principles, though born in a time when the fastest message traveled by horse, are strangely precise in diagnosing the ailments of our hyper-connected age. At their core, they revolve around a simple but demanding truth. Your time is your most finite resource, and everything in your environment is either serving your purpose or stealing from it. He taught that leisure odium must be intentional, that busyness negotium can easily become an empty performance, that anticipation of life's difficulties makes you stronger. We anticipate it the way a sailor watches the weather. We use premeditatio malorum to predict where our attention will be pulled. Endless scrolls, just checking loops. Late night, dopamine binges, and we design the countermeasures before the temptation arrives. We hold memento mori close enough to feel the weight of each day, knowing that none of us gets an infinite supply. We create pockets of purposeful solitude to audit our choices, cut the fat from our commitments, and return to the handful of aims that truly matter. We curate our feeds, strip away notifications that peck at our focus, and build digital sanctuaries that filter the noise instead of amplifying it. We practice using technology the way a craftsperson uses a tool, cleanly, with respect, and only for the job at hand. The path back to stillness does not require abandoning the digital world and moving to the woods, though some may choose that. It requires something harder, facing the constant stream of inputs and deciding, moment by moment, which ones to let in. It is not abstinence, but authorship, writing your own script for how technology fits into your life. You can use these networks to create art, launch businesses, share ideas, and build communities, but if you're not careful, they will also use you to feed an algorithm that knows nothing of your goals. Seneca's advice is a reminder that the choice is not between connection and isolation, but between ownership and surrender. Reclaiming control means understanding that no platform, app, or device has your best interests at heart by default. Their purpose is to keep you engaged. Your purpose must be to stay intentional. This doesn't make them evil, it makes them neutral forces in need of direction. If you set the terms, they can multiply your efforts. If you let them set the terms, they will multiply your distractions. The shift happens the moment you stop asking, "What's new?" and start asking, "What matters?" It happens when you protect your mornings from reactive habits, when you schedule deep work before deep scrolls, when you choose a face-to-face conversation over a digital one, because you know the difference in how it feels. There's a liberation that comes when you realize you don't have to be everywhere online. You don't have to answer immediately. You don't have to perform constant availability to prove your worth. Seneca would tell you that saying no to most things is what allows you to say yes to the few things that deserve your life. This is not withdrawal, it's concentration. It's the discipline of ignoring the chorus of sirens so you can hear the single note that leads you where you actually want to go. In a world addicted to speed, slowness can be an act of strength. In a culture obsessed with visibility, depth can be your quiet advantage. The call to action is not gentle because the forces pulling at you are not gentle. You cannot drift into stillness. You have to steer toward it. That means carving out non-negotiable time to think without input, setting hard boundaries on what devices can demand of you, and training yourself to be comfortable in the space between pings. It means treating your attention like currency and spending it where it will bring a return you care about. This is a practice, not a one-time fix. You'll be pulled off course. You'll be tempted to check, to scroll, to fill every pause. The work is in returning over and over to the helm. If you start small, 10 minutes of morning quiet, one app limit, a single evening a week without screens, you will begin to notice the water calming around you. Your thoughts stretch out again. The constant itch to check begins to fade. Conversations feel fuller, meals taste better, and the day has a shape instead of blur. You realize that stillness is not the absence of activity, but the presence of attention. From there, you can build. You can choose the tools that serve you and discard the ones that don't. You can stand in the flood of information without drowning in it. And so the question remains, the same one that would have made sense to a Roman philosopher and makes just as much sense now. Will you let the siren song of the digital world steer your ship onto the rocks? Or will you take the oars in your own hands and decide where you're going? In the end, no algorithm can answer that for you, and no platform can make the choice. The wheel is yours, the current is strong, and the horizon is wide open. The only thing left to decide is whether you will let yourself be carried or whether you will steer. Will you let the sirens lead, or will you row? So here we are. We've walked through the principles Seneca might give us if he were alive in the middle of this digital storm. We've seen that the real goal isn't to run away from technology, but to reclaim authorship of our own lives. It's not about smashing the ship, it's about steering it. We've talked about anticipating temptation, seeing the traps before you step into them. We've remembered that our time is finite, that each day is a piece of life we never get back. We've practiced building intentional solitude, curating our digital environment, and making technology work for us instead of against us. These are not quick hacks, they're lifelong disciplines. And they're not meant to make your life smaller, but richer. Here's the truth. You'll be tempted again. The siren song of the endless scroll will call to you when you're bored, when you're tired, when you're avoiding something you don't want to face. And each time, you will have a choice. Do you drift or do you steer? Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." In our age, wasting life rarely feels like wasting life. It feels like just one more video, just one more scroll, just one more reply. But these just ones add up to years we can't get back. That's why the smallest acts of reclaiming your attention matter. Each time you choose to focus, each time you protect your time, each time you step away from the noise and into something that truly matters, you're building a life on your terms. And I want you to know something important. You are not powerless in this. You are not a passive passenger on this ship. You have the wheel in your hands right now. You decide whether technology is a chain or a key. You decide whether your attention is sold to the highest bidder or invested in what actually matters to you. You decide whether you drift or direct. So here's my challenge to you starting today. Pick one practice from this video and commit to it for the next week. Maybe it's setting your phone to do not disturb for the first hour after waking. Maybe it's unfollowing 5 accounts that don't add value to your life. Maybe it's spending one evening completely offline and seeing how it feels. Whatever it is, commit to it and notice the change. This isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. If this message has resonated with you, don't let it fade the moment the video ends. Take it into your next decision, your next moment of temptation, your next opportunity to choose presence over distraction. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's drowning in digital noise, share this video with them. Let's make this a conversation, not just a monologue. If you haven't already, please support the channel so we can keep creating content like this. Hit the like button to help others find it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a comment and tell me which practice you're going to try. First, I read every single one. And if you want to directly help this channel stay independent and ad-free, click that super thanks button below. Your support makes it possible for me to keep diving deep into topics like this and sharing them with you. I'll leave you with the question we started with, because it's the question that matters every single day. Will you let the siren song lead you onto the rocks, or will you take the oars in your own hands and steer toward the life you want? The choice is yours, and it starts right now.